The crisp autumn air swirled fallen leaves into a chaotic ballet around the gleaming chrome of the limousine. Inside, a man named Julian stared out at the familiar suburban landscape blurring past, a stark contrast to the polished interior and the life he now inhabited. The city, a concrete jungle of ambition and opportunity, had been left behind. He was heading home, a journey he had anticipated with a mixture of excitement and dread for weeks. Home, a place that simultaneously represented his roots and a chasm that seemed to widen with each passing year. He'd received the text earlier that day, a curt message, devoid of any warmth, a digital ice shard piercing the veneer of familial expectations. "Don't come to the family dinner." The sender, his younger sister, a woman whose approval he had once desperately craved. The words, simple yet potent, had sliced through him, reopening old wounds, stirring up the familiar ache of feeling like an outsider. Julian had spent his life navigating the choppy waters of his family's expectations, a family steeped in tradition and rigid social hierarchies. He had always felt like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, his ambitions and choices often at odds with their carefully constructed world. He had chosen a different path, one that led him far from the comforting predictability of their lives, a path that had brought him both incredible success and a deep sense of isolation. He'd built an empire, a sprawling network of ventures that spanned the globe, a life of private jets, luxury suites, and the constant hum of high-stakes deals. Yet, in the face of that success, the sting of that text message, the casual dismissal, cut deeper than any boardroom battle. It was a reminder that, despite his achievements, he was still an outsider, still judged by a standard he could never fully meet. His response, a photograph, a fleeting glimpse of his current reality, the expansive cabin of a private jet, a panorama of clouds painted with the fiery hues of sunset, a silent retort, a visual declaration of his independence, a defiant gesture. He knew it wouldn't change anything, wouldn't bridge the chasm, but it was a moment of catharsis, a moment of self-preservation. The limousine glided through the wrought iron gates of his childhood home, the sprawling mansion a monument to generations of privilege and unspoken expectations. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a fortress, the high walls echoing with the ghosts of past conflicts and unspoken resentments. He knew what awaited him inside, the judgmental glances, the polite but strained conversations, the underlying tension that always seemed to permeate the air. He stepped out of the car, the cool air a stark contrast to the climate-controlled interior. He clutched a small, worn, leather-bound journal, a silent confidant filled with his thoughts, his dreams, his failures. He knew this homecoming would be a trial, a test of his resolve, a journey into the heart of the family that had both shaped and rejected him. The evening ahead would be a dance of unspoken words, of long-held grudges, and of the desperate hope for connection, a hope that had, against all odds, stubbornly refused to die. The dinner, a battleground, and he, the reluctant warrior. The weight of the unspoken was a constant companion in Julian's life, particularly when it came to his family. His success, a glittering constellation of achievements, was often met with a dismissive shrug, a subtle undermining of his choices. Rather than celebrating his triumphs, they seemed to dwell on the perceived shortcomings, the ways in which he had deviated from their prescribed path. Building on this, Julian saw a pattern emerging. His accomplishments, the very things he had striven for, were often viewed through a lens of resentment, a subtle accusation that he had somehow abandoned them. Their expectations, a rigid framework of tradition and social standing, had become a cage, suffocating his spirit. Consequently, he learned to internalize their critiques, the constant barrage of subtle disapproval etching itself onto his self-perception. Another crucial layer is the concept of face, the unspoken rules governing social interactions within his family. The family dinner, the very event he was now excluded from, was less about genuine connection and more about maintaining a facade of unity and harmony. Differences were suppressed, vulnerabilities hidden, and the true complexities of their relationships were glossed over with polite conversation. Conversely, Julian's approach to life was rooted in authenticity and openness. He valued genuine connection over superficial appearances. He surrounded himself with people who celebrated his successes, not those who begrudged them. However, this divergence from his family's norms only deepened the chasm between them. making him feel even more like an outsider. Now, consider how this applies when you face similar situations. Julian's experience illuminated how family dynamics could be a battlefield of unspoken expectations, where individual achievements were often overshadowed by a collective desire for conformity. The act of sending the photograph, a seemingly defiant gesture, was, in a way, a desperate attempt to break free from these constraints, to assert his individuality. Furthermore, the photograph served as a symbol of his independence, a visual representation of the life he had built for himself. It was a way of saying, "This is who I am, this is what I've become, and I will not apologize for it." However, it was not intended to be a weapon. The action was a reaction to the sting of rejection, a defense mechanism against the familiar pain of feeling inadequate. Julian understood that the photograph would not change the fundamental dynamics of his relationship with his family. It was unlikely to bridge the gap. It was a momentary act of rebellion, a fleeting moment of self-affirmation in the face of their disapproval. It was a symbol of his freedom, a testament to his journey, and a reminder that he, ultimately, had to define his own worth. Julian's internal landscape, however, was not solely defined by his family's disapproval. A more intricate layer of complexity stemmed from his own internal conflicts, the persistent echoes of self-doubt that lingered even in the face of external success. He grappled with the inherent paradox of his achievements. The more he attained, the more he questioned the true meaning of his pursuits. Furthermore, his journey was marked by a profound sense of loneliness, a consequence of his relentless drive and the isolation that often accompanied it. The private jet, the luxury suites, the constant travel, they were symbols of his freedom, but also reminders of his solitude. It was a gilded cage, offering comfort and convenience, but lacking the warmth of genuine connection. Building on this, the photograph, a symbol of defiance to his family, was also a reflection of his internal struggle. It was a carefully constructed image, a curated representation of his life, designed to project an aura of effortless success. However, beneath the surface, he questioned its authenticity, the true cost of the life he had built. The pursuit of wealth and status had brought him a measure of satisfaction, but it had also distanced him from the simpler joys of life, the everyday moments of connection and belonging. Conversely, another crucial element in understanding Julian's reaction was his inherent need for validation. The family dinner, the simple act of being included, represented a primal desire for acceptance, a yearning to be seen and valued by the people who mattered most. His defiance, the photograph sent as a response, was a way of attempting to reclaim control over the narrative, but it also revealed his vulnerability, the lingering pain of feeling excluded. Consequently, Julian, in sending the photograph, was not simply making a statement about his success. It was a complex act, fueled by a combination of factors, a defense mechanism against rejection, an assertion of his independence, and a subtle cry for connection. It was a reflection of his internal conflict, his struggle to reconcile his external achievements with his internal yearnings. Now, consider how this applies when you face similar situations. You too may find yourself navigating the treacherous waters of family dynamics, where expectations and disappointments can collide. You may, like Julian, feel the sting of exclusion, the subtle judgments that can erode your self-esteem. Remember, the actions we take are often a reflection of our internal struggles, our attempts to reconcile our external realities with our internal desires. The photograph, the defiant gesture, was not just about the surface, the private jet, the luxury, but about the deeper layers, the internal battles that shaped his every move. It was a testament to the human condition, the constant search for belonging and acceptance. Julian's reaction, the immediate impulse to broadcast his success, reveals a deeper layer, the human tendency to seek external validation, even when it contradicts internal values. He, like many, was conditioned to equate achievement with worth. It's a societal construct, an invisible script we internalize from childhood, where accomplishments become the currency of acceptance. Furthermore, the photograph acted as a shield, a defensive maneuver against the expected criticism. It was a preemptive strike, a way of controlling the narrative before the family could dictate it. In essence, he was saying, "I am not what you expect, and I am not ashamed." This impulse, to manage perceptions, is a common human trait. We craft our personas, curate our images, and present the most favorable versions of ourselves to the world. Building on this, however, Consider the inherent vulnerability of this approach. Relying on external validation, on the approval of others, leaves one susceptible to the whims of circumstance. It creates a dependency, a constant need to prove oneself, which can be exhausting and ultimately unsatisfying. Julian's success, while impressive, was hollow if it failed to bring him the connection and acceptance he craved. Conversely, another crucial aspect is the concept of phantom limb syndrome, applied to family dynamics. Even when absent, the family's expectations and judgments continue to exert a powerful influence. Their disapproval, like a phantom limb, can cause pain long after the physical separation. Julian, despite his physical distance and independent life, remained tethered to their opinions. This illustrates the enduring power of family, for better or for worse. Consequently, the photograph, while seemingly a symbol of freedom, also underscored Julian's continued entanglement. It was a signal flare, a desperate attempt to be seen and understood, a tacit admission of the family's continued significance. The image, a snapshot of his curated reality, was not just a statement of success, but a plea for recognition, a yearning to be accepted, even in his defiance. Now, consider how this applies when you face similar situations. Do you find yourself measuring your worth against external metrics? Are you striving for recognition, even at the expense of your internal peace? Julian's story serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that true fulfillment comes not from external validation, but from aligning your actions with your values. The photograph, in this context, is not just a gesture of defiance, but a reflection of the ongoing search for self-acceptance, a journey that transcends material success. It's a reminder that the most important approval is the one you grant yourself. Drawing these threads together, we find ourselves at a crossroads, a point where the individual's journey intersects with the complex tapestry of human connection. The narrative has unfolded, revealing the intricate dance between aspiration and expectation, between the yearning for independence and the enduring pull of belonging. We've witnessed the subtle power of societal pressures, the internalized scripts that shape our actions, even when those actions seem to defy them. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes clearer, illuminated by the shadows of self-doubt and the persistent echoes of familial influence. We see how the pursuit of external validation, a siren song for so many, can lead to a life of gilded isolation, a constant striving that leaves an emptiness at its core. The photograph, the seemingly defiant gesture, transforms from a simple act of rebellion into a complex expression of the human condition. As we pivot towards the final reflection, consider the weight of unspoken words, the invisible bonds that tether us to our past, even as we strive to forge our own paths. The story has painted a portrait of an individual grappling with internal conflict, a person striving to reconcile success with authenticity, independence with connection. This is not merely a tale of one man's journey, but a mirror reflecting the universal human experience, the constant negotiation between who we are and who we believe we should be. Reflecting on this journey so far, we are reminded of the inherent fragility of self-perception, the ease with which external forces can shape our internal narratives. The family dynamic, a microcosm of society, becomes a battleground where values are tested and identities are forged, often through a crucible of unspoken expectations. We see the subtle, yet profound ways in which our choices are influenced by the need for acceptance, the yearning to be seen and valued by those closest to us. This narrative is akin to a carefully constructed mosaic, where each piece, each observation, contributes to the overall picture. The individual struggles, the societal pressures, the internal conflicts, they all interlock, revealing the complex landscape of the human heart. The story has illustrated how the pursuit of achievement, while often lauded, can become a burden, a source of internal conflict, if it is not aligned with our deepest values. The narrative has invited us to examine the very nature of our relationships, the ways in which we define ourselves in relation to others. It has encouraged introspection, prompting us to question the motivations behind our actions, the forces that shape our choices. The photograph, a single image, a fleeting moment, has become a symbol of a larger story, a testament to the enduring human search for meaning, belonging, and ultimately, self-acceptance. The limousine, once a symbol of Julian's escape, began its return journey. The city lights, a familiar beacon of ambition, shimmered in the distance, a stark contrast to the quiet darkness that had enveloped the family home. The photograph, now a digital echo, resonated with a new significance. It was no longer just a defiant gesture, a fleeting act of rebellion. It had become a marker, a testament to a journey of self-discovery that, in many ways, was only beginning. The family dinner, the event he had avoided, remained a potent symbol of the unspoken expectations that had shaped his life. Yet, the sting of exclusion, the familiar ache of not belonging, had begun to soften, replaced by a nascent understanding. He recognized that the photograph, his initial response, was a symptom of a deeper need, the need to define himself, not in opposition to his family, but in alignment with his own values. The true measure of his journey, he realized, lay not in the external achievements, the glittering facade of success, but in the internal work, the quiet acts of self-acceptance and self-compassion. He had arrived at a crossroads, a point where he could choose to remain tethered to the past, to allow the unspoken expectations to continue to dictate his path, or he could choose to forge a new future, one defined by authenticity, connection, and the courage to be true to himself. The narrative, a reflection of the human condition, had revealed the intricate dance between aspiration and expectation, the internal struggles that shape our actions. It was a reminder that the pursuit of external validation, while often tempting, could become a trap, a source of emptiness if it overshadowed our authentic selves. The story of Julian was not just a story of exclusion, but a story of liberation, a journey towards self-acceptance. As the limousine merged back into the city's relentless flow, Julian's thoughts turned inward. The photograph, the defining act of the day, transformed. It became a reminder of the enduring power of family, the ways in which our relationships, for better or worse, shape our identities. It was a testament to the human capacity for resilience, the ability to find strength amidst adversity, and the persistent yearning for connection. The true practice begins now. It lies in the everyday moments, the subtle choices we make. It is in the courage to challenge the internalized scripts, to define our own worth, and to build relationships based on authenticity and understanding. It is in the willingness to embrace our vulnerabilities, to forgive ourselves and others, and to cultivate the inner peace that transcends external circumstances. It is a continuous journey, a lifelong exploration of the self. The story's purpose is to inspire each of us to reflect deeply, to recognize our internal battles, and to embrace the challenging yet liberating path of self-discovery. The photograph, a single image, becomes a starting point. The future, a canvas waiting to be painted.